The Fall 2020 Hinkle, Pryor, and Fisher Parent Empowerment Conference. Realities for a New Reality. 2 days, 25 workshops, renowned speakers and presenters, by families, for families, nearly 40 hours of unfiltered and straightforward information, made possible by the leaders in disability rights advocacy for over 45 years, Hinkle, Pryor, and Fisher, attorneys at law. So welcome to this session of our ongoing encore presentation series of the Fall 2020 Hinkle, Pryor, and Fisher Parent Empowerment Conference.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here, and welcome and thank you for attending the Hinkle, Pryor, and Fisher Virtual Parent Empowerment Conference. My name is Paul Pryor, and I will be your moderator and host for this workshop today, entitled Out of Harm's Way, Helpful Safety Tools and Resources for Kids with Disabilities and Special Needs Care and Special Health Care Needs, presented by Adrian Robertiello. Before we begin, just some housekeeping stuff. We ask that all participants mute their microphones throughout the session. This workshop will last approximately 90 minutes. And if time allows, Adrian will take questions throughout the presentation. Please ask your questions in the chat box, which is for Windows users is below. I think for iPad users is along one of the sides. Ask your questions in the chat box, and I'll be feeding them to Adrian as we go along. Again, time permitting. For those of you who have not signed up for this evening's keynote address, I highly encourage you to sign up for this evening's keynote delivered by the former New Jersey Supreme Court Justice Helen E. Hones, entitled Autism After COVID-19, Navigating a World Where Everything Changed and Nothing Has Changed. Justice Hones is also, in addition to being a former Supreme Court justice, is also the parent of a child with autism, and she will provide a very unique perspective on the times in which we live. She is both an inspiring person and an inspiring speaker, and you won't want to miss out. I've seen her speak many times, and she really is a very moving person. So simply go to the conference event page, click on the agenda tab, scroll down to the keynote address on the agenda tab, and click register, and you'll get a link that will direct you to the presentation for this evening. So hope to see you there. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Adrian. So I've known Adrian a long time, and she is one of the dearest people to me in the disability community. She is a strong advocate for inclusion of people living with disabilities and healthcare needs. At Children's Specialized Hospital, she works to educate and provide practical resources to support quality of life, inclusion, and safety. Through grant funding from Kohl's Cares, Adrian has developed and implemented several initiatives, including Autism Safety, It's Unpredictable, the Community Hub, Friends Like You, Friends Like Me, the Real Life Tip for Kids with Autism. Adrian collaborates with organizations, healthcare providers, emergency response teams, educators, businesses, and recreation providers. Adrian is a graduate from Seton Hall University. So am I. She is of course, the law school, not the undergraduate, but still, go Pirates, right? She is the parent of a child diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder and other disabilities. Children's Specialized Hospital is, of course, the nation's leading provider of inpatient and outpatient care for children and young adults from birth to 21 years of age facing healthcare challenges. I've known Adrian, as I said, for a lot of years now, although it does seem like yesterday, and I know of no one more dedicated, who's not out there more, who comes at this both from a professional and personal perspective. And I know I said some nice things about admiring Justice Helen Holmes, which I do, but I also admire Adrian Robertiello as well. So Adrian, I'm really honored to host and moderate your workshop today. And with that, take it away.
Thanks, Paul. And I have the ability to share my screen right now, like I do.
Oh, you know what? Thank you for that. I am going to make you a co-host, which will give you
that power.
Yeah, you'll have the power to share your screen while you're doing that. And for the folks out there, while you're doing that and going through your presentation, Adrian was kind enough to send me her slide deck a few minutes ago before we got online. I am going to upload her slide deck for everyone to download in the chat box. So give me a few minutes while Adrian is doing her thing, and I will upload her slide deck so it's available for download. So,
thank
all right,
you,
Adrian,
thank you so much. Now that slide deck that he's about to download or upload for you guys, not only does it have the presentation, but it also has a ton of resources at the end and a great segment on topic points to educate a lot of these safety issues that we're talking about. So really helping you educate our kids about safety. So I'm kind of wanted it to be a full deck for you to take away, and I'm going to try to share my screen right now with you guys. Let's see, there we go. And let me know, can you guys see it? Can you hear me? Can you see it? Confirm. You can't hear me, I'm talking. I can't
I
hear
muted myself, I'm sorry.
Okay. So good, we're good.
We can't hear you. I could hear you, you could not hear me because
okay, so I'm going.
Good.
Thank you guys. All right, so let's get started. Lots to share. I don't want to get into a real lot of detail on each of the topics, but I do want to present to you the issues and the resources that go along with it, and leave some time at the end for questions. But you have this. I really would love for you to download this and or print it, so you have these references and this information. Lots of links on there for you to get more information. So let's get started. As Paul said, the work that I do is sponsored by a really great partnership with Coles Cares. Children's and Coles have been really had a great partnership for many, many years. And without their their charitable and philanthropic aspect to them, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things that I'm doing here today for children special ed. All right, so within the presentation, you're going to see a couple things. One is helpful websites. So these are links to websites that you can go to after we are through here to get that information that I'm giving you. Takeaway tools or resources that I'm giving you that you can print, that you can use, that you could teach with. And safety education is just that. It's some information that you can use to educate your students, your children, whoever that might be. So just here in summary, if you think of some of our kids, whether your child has autism or any type of specific developmental, intellectual, or physical disability, look at these things right here, and you can see there are many things here that your children may have. They may not respond to their name. They may have difficulty waiting. Think about those things and how they relate to safety, right? So there are many things, and many of the core characteristics that are associated with your child's disability that really have a safety issue that is often associated with it. So let's start with home safety. So here we have, it could be falls or injuries. They may not, and none of this may be intentional, right? So kids may, any kid can climb on furniture, but kids with certain disabilities may be likely not to understand the safety aspects. They may throw things, there may be electrical hazards, eating things that are not necessarily meant to be eating, things, repetitive behaviors. So we talk about self-stimulatory behaviors in autism, but let's just say instead of flapping, someone's turning on and off the stove knob, right? The knob on the stove, or opening, closing scissors. So these are some of the safety related things, challenges and issues that might be in the home. Pica, if you're not familiar with that, that's where an individual would eat something that is not meant to be eaten, such as cat litter. My son, personally, I have a son with autism, and the other day he was hungry and went right for the cat food, and actually had a piece of raw chicken that we put in for the cat food. And as a result of that, we did wind up calling the Poison Helpline. So I recommend you getting one of these little stickers here, putting them by your phone or in your cell phone, having this number available. It's not 911, and if there is an emergency, life-threatening emergency, you should call 911. But this Poison Helpline is really there. My son just ate dirt. What do I do? My daughter just thought the medicine was a spittle. What do I do? And so this is really what it's there for. And there was a time that I was on the phone with the Poison Help Center and 911 simultaneously. So definitely this number and that website there for NJ PIES, the New Jersey Poison Information Education System, is very, very helpful. Now, we know when our kids are very young, there are lots of those little latches and brackets and things you can put on to protect your electrical outlets or on the sinks or etc. But many of our kids get older and stronger and more ingenious to close things. So we have to think about what our kids are trying to do or get into, and how to protect them from unsafe things like mouthwash, if they're going to ingest that, which is very high alcohol content, or cleaning supplies, as you see here. What can we do to protect that and lock that? And out of sight, out of mind is usually the best way to handle that. But we also want to make sure we want our children to eventually be independent and be able to use some of these things, be able to cook on the stove, plug something in if they need to. So we definitely have to teach safety from a very young age, but we have to protect our kids as best as we can until they have mastered the skill. So there is an organization, I think that's my next slide here. I want to switch. There we go. No, first of all, I have here some printable symbols that we have created at Children's Jersey. I gave you the phone number there and the website. They do a lot of things from augmentative communication. I'm not going to go into the details of what they do, but they definitely are involved in safety aspects. So that's the phone number and email. They are a qualified provider through the Children's System of Care. They can help you. So if you're in that system, if you're in the Perform Care DDD system and you need that kind of assistance, you can actually give them a call and let them know what's going on. Of course, they will have to, do the due diligence at the beginning and get whatever information they need to get out from you and from potentially your doctor, but they are there to help, and they do things related to safety. All right, so now we just did some home safety. Let's go to fire safety. So a person with various developmental or autism and intellectual disabilities may not understand what a fire danger is. They may not know how to communicate if they're burned. They may run back into a fire. They may not know if there's something that's inside, or if they have what's called a safe place, which we'll talk about in a minute. They may run in because they feel that place is safe and that's where they feel comfortable, and that place may be at risk during that fire. And they may not be able to understand a lesson that they may have learned at school, like a fire drill, or maybe they learned the fire drill at home and now you're at their grandmother's house. They may not be able to generalize that skill from home to another place. So these are some of the more the fire safety challenge categories, right, that we are dealing with a lot of our kids and teens. So the safe place I talk about a lot, these are the place that often a person with autism finds safe, where they feel comfortable. It could be under their bed, in a closet, it could be maybe outside, it could be anywhere, but we have to also know that this place may be at risk during a fire episode. So we have to really be aware and teach that to our kids. There is so this is another teaching tool for you. This is a Sesame Street Fire Safety Program. It is meant for young kids, but it really teaches to a lot of great tools, making a map, getting outside and staying outside. All of these things are really great, helpful, simple instructions that you can use to teach your kids about fire safety. This is one example of something that comes from that. So making a map, exiting, if your kids are more advanced, helping them taking pictures of the different areas, putting signs up at different places in the home where exiting. And if I do have to emphasize one thing, if you're teaching fire drill, make sure you teach it in multiple various ways, because the one place may be blocked or may not be able to get out. We're talking about teaching about touching the walls, all of those things. So this is really great, a very great resource in Sesame Street. And my son, who loves Elmo, even at age almost 20 now, still watches Elmo Visits the Firehouse. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't have that ability, but I really found this Elmo's World video very, very helpful to teach safety. Really, it's, get out, stay out, don't you go back in, and really a lot of things really taught in the great Sesame Street way. Okay, so emergency and response and interactions with first responders. So here are some challenges for emergency responders that they have when working with various children and teens, adolescents, even adults. Communication, non-compliance, they're struggling when they're approached. They may be rescued from the fire, but then elope after that. And wander somewhere. There's, as we talked about, that personal safe place might be at risk, and there may be forced entry due to adapted locks and other protective measures. So if you happen to put certain types of barricades on windows and doors, please make the effort to let your emergency responders know about that, because as much as that would protect your child or teen from eloping and wandering, bolting out of the home, that also inhibits a first responder from coming into the home. So I am a big advocate for making connections with your emergency responders before an emergency happens, before that fire, right, before anything. So here you can see some activities that could be at an open house, a town fair. I know COVID has put a big damper on a lot of these visits, but that could be done virtually too. Let's set up a Zoom meeting with the local rescue squad. Let's set up, my town just recently started a coffee with, coffee with a cop at a local coffee shop here outside. So that's something you could do. You can have a hot dog and lemonade with a Zoom meeting if we want to get together and introduce your child to an emergency responder. I think that's a really great opportunity right now to do this virtually. Here's another takeaway tool for you. It's a form that you can fill out, that you can share with your emergency responder, or you can keep this up in your home. I had for a long time, I had this tacked onto my refrigerator. I know someone who has laminated this and clipped it onto their backseat pocket of their car, but it really provides some general information about your child and identifying features and what their fears and challenges and triggers and likes and dislikes and places that they might go. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, I really think that you should have the conversation before the emergency. So you would contact your dispatch center. So not necessarily, do not call 911, but call every town is different. Your town, it might be the police that dispatch 911. It could be the county. It could be your fire department. So every town is different about the dispatch, but make that appointment, set up that virtual call right now. And we have a really great resource here, again, on that patient and family resources web link. And this here is a guide for you to have that conversation, ideas of what to say and what things are important to tell about your child. And those things could be that your child is likely to hide in that particular safe spot, or they're likely to run here, or they're likely to not respond to their name when it's called. These are all things that are on a list on this form that really can help you and serve as a guide in your conversation with your emergency responders. Now, not all kids, teens, adults with disabilities, developmental and intellectual disabilities can use 911. Some can, some may not be able to. But this here is a teaching tool that's available to help. A lot of schools have used this particular resource as well. It has a little script. My name is Adrian and I have autism. There's an emergency and I need help. So it gives a script. It talks about what an emergency is and what you should do in that emergency while you call 911. So this is printable on that website. There is another card that's there on that website too that's meant for the dispatchers. So if they hear somebody echo what they're saying, so if they say 911, what's your emergency? And the kid says 911, what's your emergency? That echoing may not necessarily be a prank call, but of course it could be echolalia that goes along with autism. So there's an associated card with this piece that helps for the dispatchers. And this kind of gives that information of what's on the card for the individual. We talked a little bit about the safety plan. So whatever the child's availability or level to be able to conceptualize this or work there, it really depends on what the capacity of the student is to understand these things and help develop them. But the more independence and the more that you can include your child or teen in this process, the more likely they are to understand it and follow it. So involve your children as much as they can in developing their safety plan. All right, I'm going to say this a couple of times, whether it's a police officer, first responder, or whoever, but very often we hear, and when I do a lot of training for the police academy and in service with the police departments, and they hear all the time, if you do this one more time, I'm going to call the cops, right? Please don't do that, because when we're having, whether that be a fire, whether your child's eloping or wandering, whether there's any other kind of emergency, we want our kids to consider our emergency responders safe people. And if you're using them as punishment, they're not going to go to them. So I really have to advocate for this in a very strong way, that we should not use police officers or any first responder as a punishment. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about transportation and travel safety. And this speaks for itself for a lot of families, even with regular kids, any kid can be that, but we have to really pay attention to our kids who might have behavioral issues or sensory issues, stimming with things with the car door handles, whatever it might be. Traveling can be very stressful for many families. So here in New Jersey, I've given you a website there. It's Find a Tech. It's for Certified Child Passenger Safety Technicians, CPST. And I would absolutely recommend, these are the folks that put in the car, help you make sure that baby car seat is in your car correctly. And very often it's in your local police department or in somewhere in your region somewhere. But there are people who are certified for people with disabilities. That may be a physical disability, somebody who is has certain kind of equipment, a trachea, like it could be anything, spinal cord issues, any type of special needs, travel. There are people specifically trained for that purpose. So if you go onto the website and click, there's a drop-down menu, and you see for kids with special needs, then there you'll find a child passenger safety technicians that can help you to help your child stay safe in the vehicle. There are specialized safety restraints that are where the buckle might be underneath the seat or behind them and out of reach. So all of these types of apparatus, you want to call that, or safety restraints, are you can have those conversations with that person when you get a hold of them. You'll also see a lot of gadgets all over the internet, right? And let's see, how do I keep my kid in the seat? Let me put like all the information about my kid into that strap that goes along in the seat. You can see a lot of these things here, and we're trying to come up with so many different ways to make sure our kids stay in and stay safe, and even provide information to emergency responders. But I have to tell you that none of this is really regulated by the automobile manufacturers or through any type of safety when they do kind of different kinds of accident, when they test for accidents and stuff like that. The words leaving my mind right now, but all of this is with good intention, but it may actually inhibit or prevent and really be not safe by putting these things on. It may restrict that safety belt from moving, or it may prevent somebody from being able to open the seatbelt if necessary. So please be careful with these, and really pay attention to make sure you seek out this assistance from these guys right here, and making sure that what you're putting on the vehicle is very safe. There are also things we call social stories or pictorial narratives. We have one right here on wearing my safety belt, but there are many, many educational tools that are available to help your children, depending on their level of understanding, be able to understand being safe within a vehicle. So let's get out of the car, vehicle, and go to air. I'm going to just quickly mention this right here. There is a personal support specialist. And then if you can't get a hold of the person, it would be a TSA supervisor. I've given you a number there. As long as an airport is open, a personal support specialist must be available. Make sure you contact 72 hours in advance before you go there. Let them know what you have, any special equipment, the behaviors of your child, the challenges of your child. I have done this. The adult typically should not be separated from the child with special needs. And if you are denied, and I have heard many people who are denied travel, they have to provide you with a reason why. And if you go onto that website, it gives you all the specifications of what they have to do. There is also this card, a TSA notification card, that you can print off from the website. The link is there that can provide, again, you can, when you present your documentation, you can provide this as well. But I do recommend that I've spoken to them on the phone, and you do want to call 72 hours in advance, and then you give your name, and they will be able to identify you when you get there. All right, community safety, elopement, and wandering. We talked a little bit about this, but we have another social story here about walking through town and all those, crosswalks and what to do, where to stop, what the stoplight is, and all of those kind of things that we see as we walk around the street. Another takeaway is this. We also have this available. If you email me, I even could be happy to send you an actual real card, but there are many cards that are available online, but I would absolutely love to send you one of these. We have to remember that presenting an ID is the person's choice. No person ever has to reveal their diagnosis to someone else, even though I advocate it strongly to families because it absolutely can prevent some negative things that are happening. And I'm working right now on some transition age from teen, those transition curriculum. I'm really trying to make sure we provide our teens with the tools they need, how to interact with a police officer, what to do if you get pulled over by a police officer, when you go to an event like a concert and you're giving up your bag, all of those things that we kind of forget to teach in those transition years. I'm trying to work on with safety this year, but that decision to release your information is a personal choice, but I do highly recommend it because it really can help the police officer or security officer have more information and be able to interact with you better. If you do have an ID, there are different types of IDs that are available. I really want to make sure people know that, particularly an ID card, if you have a teen who's so think about a person with autism who's not responding to names, who's walking perhaps a little like they're intoxicated. So they're presenting to look like a person who is not responsive or not respectful of that police officer. And now your child, your teen is going into their like this, into their jacket and getting their ID, and that could be very much misrepresented in going for a weapon or other. So I really highly recommend that identification like this be worn outside. It does not have to have a lot of information. It can say, hello, my name is Joe, please call this number, and that's it. You can really put as little or as much information, but I really advocate for avoiding going into clothing or items unless that person is verbal and can say, may I get my identification out of my pocket or out of my bag or wherever that is. Many people, you'll see this, these signs available, just like you might see blind child or deaf child, an autistic child. I had one when my son was out and here in our home, but I do have to emphasize that this sign doesn't necessarily mean that your child is any safer or that people know what that means when they pass by. So I do advocate, if you'd like to get it, I can definitely provide you with the process for getting that. But I also think this is a great opportunity to write a letter to your editor or talk to your local newspaper and educate your community and help them understand why that sign is up there and what that means and what autism safety challenges are related with autism. Lastly, in this section, we're talking about the reserved parking. I gave the application below for getting an accessible parking tag. People often ask me, well, can my child with an intellectual or developmental disability get this? Well, in the actual documentation of the law, it really specifies that it's for people with physical disabilities. And when I called the state, they said, yes, they do listen to people with autism and developmental disabilities. And as long as it's a safety related issue, they do absolutely, and my son has had one, they will give the person a reserved thing if they have deemed from the doctor that it is it is authorized and true that that person it is safer for that person to park closer than further. So I gave you that information below. We often forget about this, but for those adolescents, again, safety in the community, ATM safety. So going up to an ATM and knowing what's around you and all of those things about putting the card in and watching people around you. Just wanted to put this up here because people often forget about teaching to this. So I wanted to share that with you. Eloping and wandering, about half of children with wandering, with ASD, with autism, are prone to wandering, and here are some of the reasons why. So here's some recommendations for families. Again, having those conversations with the local responders, using some visual aids. Some people have magnetic alarms on their doors, so the door opens, the alarm goes off. Service animals, you'll see lots of different choices here. Again, please don't use those police officers as punishment because you want, if they happen to wander or elope, you want them to be able to respond to you. So I'm going to talk briefly about personal tracking devices, and before I do, there is no best one for anyone, and I hear that often from doctors, from police officers, from families. Oh, they go on Facebook and they say, hey, I heard this one's really great, this one's, this one's better. So here's just a summary of personal tracking devices here. And there are different ways to wear them: in your pocket, around the ankle or your wrist, on a lanyard, clipped on clothing, it goes on your body, it goes on your belt or your shoe. So how secure is that device for that individual? Can they take it off? That's definitely an important characteristic of the device, but we have, I really recommend you printing this particular resource that's on that website. It gives all the different things that you should consider about your specific child when you're or it could be an adult. If you have an adult or an adolescent who is who wanders, these are things, these are all the different technical aspects of these devices that are there. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of the common common personal tracking devices that are available. That includes Project Lifesaver, that includes Angel Sense. All of those things are there, and I really recommend that you really take some time to review what types of things are available. There is a medical diagnosis code, Z91.83, and this is something, whether it's Alzheimer's or autism, or anybody who tends to wander, it doesn't matter the disability, but this code needs to be associated with the specific disability. So you have this code, and now what? So with this code, you probably could go to your insurance carrier and ask, say, hey, we really want this device. We have this diagnosis code. You know, my child has a horrible sense of wandering. And you know what? There is this rare chance your insurance provider may be able to get that for you. In my experience, I have not heard one that has, but I'm not saying they don't, because I believe there probably are some that do. However, once you have that denial, with that denial, you probably can go to an agency, an organization, a local, a group in your community and say, you know what? I have a prescription from my doctor. I have a denial from my insurance. It really is important that my son or daughter get this. And you may be able to get funding either through a community fundraiser, through your local first responders, through your local agency, as I said, or even a state agency. I know that Perform Care will review, not that they necessarily will pay for it, but they said they would review the challenges that go along with this and see if it's appropriate to fund some of that. So that denial from your insurance can be helpful. And here's some information about Project Lifesaver. There are different types of tracking mechanisms. So this one here is a radio signal. Angel Sense is a GPS. So there are different types of technology that different devices have. Drowning is the leading cause of injury-related death for people with autism, particularly when they wander. So we really want to protect and be aware of protecting the water sources that are around us, even if they're farther away. Even if you were at the grandmother's house or a friend's house last week and your child had a good time, they may wind up going back there. So really being aware of those water sources and where that child may have been. So here's some recommendations for that. American Academy of Pediatrics recommends the supervision plan for children with autism and other special needs, and to have a checklist of nearby ponds, lakes, pools for where to look if a child does or wander. All right, emergency preparedness. So storms happen, emergency can happen anyone, and we need to be as prepared as possible. And we all talk about those go kits and what happens, and think about our kids and think about your child in particular. What would happen if you had to quickly leave your home and go somewhere else without all the things that he or she likes? Or what are we going to be able to do if there is an emergency, even sheltering in place and not having the things you need? And when we were on lockdown, right, what did that mean for your child, and were you prepared for that? So before the emergency, we need to develop a plan. And so this is all about risk reduction. And I gave a couple tips there to contact your local emergency responders and explain those needs to them and help. Again, if we have coffee with a cop or the fire department, or on a Zoom call with our local fire department, we may be able to communicate some of these things with them. And this is, I'm not going to go into detail, but this is ways that we want to be able to create safety plans for our kids. And this one particular came from an autism advocacy website, but it can be really for any disability. And these are some of the questions that you can kind of help yourself and help your child and help your teen adult understand about medical information and where they might be able to get their medical supplies and medicines. How do they get the emergency medical supplies, and on and on? What do you do when the medicine, how to plan for the stoppage during a disaster? So these are really some good checklists here. And I look at this and I remember when Superstorm Sandy came and the power was out for how long, and how do I charge that device, right? That was a big issue. And my wash. So my son, who is he's incontinent and he wears a disposable undergarment. He's there soiling clothes, and now I have soiled clothes in my home and no way to wash it. These were issues. These were issues for me when without power. You know, some people have other issues with their wheelchairs or electronic or their communication devices. We have to think about these before the emergency, not after. I am going to advocate for this. If I advocate for anything more today than this, I really recommend everyone contact Register Ready. You can go online at registerreadynj.gov or call 211 or that number that you'll see there. This is a free database, confidential. What this does is you go on to, let's just say you went onto the registration online and you tell my son uses this kind of medication, or my daughter needs a ramp for the wheelchair, my child is likely to run. All of these questions you put on there, and this prepares your local area, your region that surrounds your home with what needs to be prepared for before the emergency. So whether that means, okay, we need refrigeration for medicine, we need ramps, we need XYZ transportation, whatever it is, these are the things that and this doesn't, not only for your child, this could be for yourself, for your parent, anybody with a disability in New Jersey. Please go on and put this information in, because it really helps the state help you. I will admit that I got a phone call for probably once a week from starting in March when this all happened, from Register Ready from my local area in Union County, saying, hey, do you have food? Are you okay? Is Marco okay? Do you have the utilities? Like, they called me and asked me if all was okay. So you have to do this at least once a year to re-register, but I really advocate, this is really very helpful for our families. Here are some more emergency preparedness websites that you can refer back to. Okay, so police interactions, law enforcement, criminal justice. So really quick, we're going to talk about security checkpoints. These are all the places that we, whether you have a disability or not, would likely be able interact with a security, security officer, a police officer. And so how are we preparing? How are you educating your child to be able to interact and to handle these particular situations safely? So these we can't forget about in our transition IEPs. We can't forget about teaching these at home. We really need to pay attention to them because they're very often overlooked. And I just gave a list here of some of those things that are involved in this kind of these kind of activities. So again, as I said, giving up your ID or your bag, your favorite toy you have to put on the conveyor belt. You know, these can inevitably be stressful situations for a kid. So let's help prepare for them before it happens. We do have in New Jersey, there's a few throughout the state, of different states in our country, but New Jersey is very lucky to have a criminal justice advocacy program, which really gets involved in with our kids, teens, adults who are involved in any kind of law enforcement, criminal justice situations. Really, it's not only, it helps to educate, it helps to provide support, alternatives to incarceration. Really a great organization that we have here in New Jersey, and I have the website down at the bottom. That's the last time I'll share that, but I really wanted to emphasize that again. Okay, school safety. All right, now we're home, right? But those those kids that are either virtual or remote, I'm on one of the school pandemic safety teams, and one of the things that I said is, okay, what about fire drills, lockdown drills, all of that? Those things still need to happen. How are we doing this, and how are we doing this with the kids with disabilities? You know, we can't get close now. You know, we have kids with sensory issues, and there's just so many things that goes on and on. So I really advocate for this with the schools themselves, with the districts, and U.S. families saying, you know, voice up and say, okay, if we're having fire drills, how are we doing this? How are we doing lockdowns? How are we generalizing these skills, whether that be from home to school, school to home, wherever that might be? How are we transporting them? So these are really very important aspects of safety that we need to consider, even if our kids are going back to school in this new environment. How are we incorporating these things within those programs? School transportation, so the bus that your kid takes back and forth, the safety that goes around that is very, very important. So if I were to summarize this in one word, it would be IEP. So the things that your child really needs to go back and forth really need to be specified within the, your child's IEP. It is a related service, but you need to know that every bus driver right now, there's a law that is that they have to have special needs training. That training is, you can look at it online, and I provided that link right there, which shows you what the training is that they go through with school transportation. This is the law that they have to have it, and all those links there, you can find out exactly what they're learning. But that does not stop you, and you should still have the conversation with your bus driver or your bus driver and aide, as well as with the school in the IEP. As I said earlier, the state provides this particular information card that you can fill out and share with them. So this is what's part of that program that I just told you about. But I know that POAC and others also have sheets that you can use to have that conversation. So please be as open and communicative as you can with your school bus transportation, letting them know all about your child. So IEP and communication, two really important things. And these are some tips here that I've left to improve your student's school bus experience, and that came from POAC themselves. I spoke about the IEP, and these are some things that you can put within your IEP or specify within your IEP. The schedules, the length of the trip, the air condition on the ride, the safety seats, things that your child needs to be able to be transported safely and based on his or her function, you know, the function of what they're being transported for. These are really some great, you know, points that you might be able to include in that IEP. Okay, so really quick safety education tips, how to teach safety. Make sure we're clear and to the point. Everything happens really, this is what it's all about. We can definitely protect our environments and communicate with our emergency responders, but we want to teach safety from a very young age. I work on that a little bit. There are really great programs in other states that I know that are really great models for teaching kids about riding in an ambulance, about fires, about you know, interacting with police officers. All the things that can happen in the ambulance in an emergency, what to do, what that yellow stripe line means. We want to teach to those things. So really, please, please incorporate safety as much as you can. And these are some ways you can do that. Doing it every day, we want to do that every day, but these are just some ways you can. These are some functional safety skills that you can include within your safety training and your safety program. And now it's time for questions. So I don't see the chat, and I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen right now. But before I stop sharing the screen, here's some information about children. We are the largest pediatric inpatient hospital in the country, and please find out more about Children's. I love working there. I love being a parent of a patient there, but lots of stuff there. And coming up in this slide, I'm not going to go over it, but as I said at the beginning, there's all the safety education things that you can teach all about safety all through these slides. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. Lots of stuff for you to take away. And then after this, lots of resources. So I'm going to stop there and stop sharing my screen. All right, go.
Adrian, how'd you like the boop-a-doop-a-doop? It's a term of art, I assume. But Adrian, that was fantastic. The information provided was, super valuable, super clear, and I really appreciate it. There's not as many questions as there are a ton of compliments about how valuable all this stuff is and how there's all kinds of things that people never thought of before and so forth. There is some stuff that came up earlier today, and it came up again in the questions about, and I think it's because of the heightened sense of awareness surrounding law enforcement interactions, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Paul Aronson is the ombudsman. He presented today, and he received a couple questions about this too, which really isn't in his bailiwick, right? So I just wondered if, I know you touched on it, I wonder if maybe you could touch on it again, because there's some questions about it. Like what are the like maybe 2 or 3 things that parents of a child with special needs maybe really needs to know, or what they really can do proactively to minimize a police interaction going badly?
Sure. First, I want everybody to know that there is training going on within police departments, right? And some of it better than others. Hopefully, more than not, there is a law. There is a law that that the emergency responders need to get training, but it really is a very short snippet online, right? But there are very responsible police departments that actually ask people like myself. I know that Gary Whiteson of POAC is out there teaching. So we have lots of people down South Jersey, North Jersey, whatever, being out there and working with our emergency responders. So I need to assure you that that is happening, but more does. There's definitely more that has to happen. For me, overall, I think there needs to be more safety education taught in schools. So one big thing I really ask families to do is in your next IEP meeting, have at least one safety goal. Put that in your IEP and make that happen. I really recommend that highly. And I gave you a lot of topics there, but that should be from day one. You're never too young to learn safety. And for everything, I can't say it should be this, or this. It really depends on your child's safety challenges, and it depends on their level of understanding and what they're capable of doing. So IEP goal number 1 for me. Then I also think it's about those conversations with your emergency responders. I really think this new virtual thing is perfect for those conversations. Now, when you want them to be able to meet them, but many of our kids have those social challenges, or maybe might be apprehensive about going there. I think this interaction, if they're capable of doing it, meeting, Officer Smith online, and hey, and making a joke. One of the things that we did, and I hope they have it again, is the National Night Out, which is where the police officers come in. I think it's usually in August. And I advocate for our families with kids with disabilities, to go out to National Night Out. And at our local one, I set up a spinning wheel at ours, and our kids with, not only kids with special needs, but I was hoping, and that's what it wound up being, the kids with special needs would spin the wheel, and it would say, go tell a police officer your favorite joke, or go ask the police officer what his favorite TV show is. And it really helped have those conversations between your emergency responders in a non-emergent way. And I think that's what you want to do. You want to be able to develop relationships and conversations before something happens. So I think those are my biggest tips. I can't hear you, Paul. There you go. I can't hear you.
I don't know. Can you hear me, Adrian?
Now I can. Now I can.
Okay, good. So apparently it worked. Okay. And in terms of another question, that kind of the theme that has come up in the dialogue box is, again, also arising out of current events. And again, I know you touched on it, but if you could elaborate, the whole thing with kids going on airplanes and not wearing masks and being booted off of airplanes and getting into fights with airlines. And, I don't know how many incidents there really have been
around the country, but
More than they should, but yeah.
more than there should, exactly. More than they're at. That's a very good point. But when it happens, it's making some pretty big news, just in the general media. And then, of course, in our community, it really we're heightened to it. So thoughts on de-escalation of those interventions, or those interactions. I know you talked about, TSA and what you could do, but maybe kind of reiterate and elaborate on that just a little bit.
Sure.
It's coming again because people come and go out of these things.
Sure. So let's start with the car. We have many people with autism or other developmental disabilities who can absolutely safely drive a car, right? And so now they're in a car, they're driving, and they get pulled over. And I have a video that's really kind of cool about this. But so they get pulled over, and now those other comorbid conditions come. Now the anxiety comes up. Now a lot of things, and so when you have that kind of, I'm not sure what to do. Is this going to be, am I going to lose my license? All those thoughts that come out into our heads, we could have behaviors or situations that either are out of control of the person themselves or that the police officer is unsure of how to deal with, right? And so how can we eliminate those or reduce those is really better. And so for A is really the training for the police officers and saying, when I see a person acting this way or having these are some signals that I need to look for, like the eye contact, the hands, all of those things. So giving the officers the tools of what to recognize before, and then the tools of, again, how to help de-escalate those, like slowing down their conversation, stepping back a little bit, giving the person the space they need. All of these things are tools that we can give to our emergency responders. We can still give those same tools, whether that be in the IEP or through some of the things that I'm going to be working on through like short little video clippets that, that they could watch online. But it's very much preferable in a school or an educational environment, helping our kids, teens understand when they feel a certain way. I don't know if anybody's heard of the zones of regulation, right? But there are different levels that we feel. And blue is kind of depressed. Green is where we want to be and everything is good. Yellow is where we're getting a little anxious, and red is where we're blowing up and we don't want to get to red, right? So we have to help our kids understand when they're in yellow and what to do when they're in yellow to help them from not going into red, right? So I think that's a really great, I think that's really great across many levels, whether their kids are verbal or not, letting them be able to communicate when they're feeling a certain way and giving you signals for that. So I think that can help with it going to that red, right? And so now back to the TSA stuff, it's really about communication, and the calling 72 hours in advance. When you get there, making sure, I've contacted the actual airline themselves, it all depends on who's working that very day, right? It really is unfortunate that way, but the more education, I know that the airlines themselves are doing more education, but we also have to be very much advocates in that education and even do dry runs as much as we can. I know there are many airlines that actually let you kind of do the whole process. Newark, I think, had some for a while where you can go and you go through the whole process, and from waiting online, going through TSA, getting on the airplane, all of that, so they can practice and understand that and feel it and be more familiar with that. So it's really about the prep as much as we can.
A lot of dress rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to see like a little mock thing, like, in a school or whatever, like in the Life Town, like let's try to go on an airplane and make that kind of happen and practice it.
Yeah, we can build demo airports in schools,
yeah, right? Why not?
but I, as someone who's been doing this a long time, been around this a long time, I actually think your advice about safety goals in IEPs is just a really good one. And it's something I've actually never thought of before, and I think now more than ever, it's really important. So I think I appreciate that little takeaway that I had today. I will also iterate, safety training and safety concerns don't go away when the child's educational entitlement ends.
That's correct.
And they move into the adult service delivery system. So to kind of piggyback off your comment about safety goals in IEPs, you probably want to also consider safety goals or community and safety awareness in ISPs for adults as well.
Absolutely.
And also for skills that people may have already acquired, but we forget, right, what some of our safety protocols might be, and reiteration or retraining or refreshing on certain safety issues is, I think, also something that parents should probably consider putting in ISPs. I don't know what your thoughts about that are.
Yeah, I mean, this year I am working on one of my goals I'm hoping to get done this year. It's really very, very important to me, and I hope I can complete it this year, is developing a series of safety small videos, right? So something that somebody could watch in a minute or two, right, on various different things. And so nothing that's going to take a lot of time, and meant for different levels, at the simplest of level of safety things. And more so for me, it's about the transition period, right? So anything from age 10 or 12 all the way up, right? And so helping them with these more adult safety things that, besides crossing the street, which is hard enough as it is, and not wandering, but I'm talking about, like I said, getting pulled over by a cop, what to do when you get to a recreation center, all these things, checking your fire alarms, all, fire smoke alarms, all of those things that we often miss educating in these transition, in the transition period. And so putting them and giving this, and not only as a gift for our kids and adolescents, but even for our educators and our emergency responders and our healthcare providers. So I am really trying to put those together. And at the same time, I like working with a couple people to hopefully also develop some SMART goals for the IPs that go along with those, so that our transition coordinators don't need another thing to do. So hopefully we can supply them at least with the core goals that they can adapt for our kids.
Yeah, every little bit helps for sure. Well, Adrian, I don't think that there's any more questions that have come up. I will say, when I attend these types of workshops, I always get reminded of how many dangers there are out there, and I sort of say, "Holy cow!" Like holy something else. Like,
right.
It's like I never thought of that one. Of that hidden danger. Treachery lurks behind every corner, so to speak. But awareness is probably 80% of the battle.
Right. Awareness and education. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I want to reemphasize, please download or print whatever you want, that slide deck, because it has all those resources and topics and websites and everything on it. So please make sure you guys keep that in your little file folder, because it really has everything, all the links that we all talked about today, and even more in the very late part of that presentation.
And to that end, I did post that in the chat box. You should be able to download it. But if you have difficulty downloading it, and sometimes that happens depending on your platform, just be reminded that Christina from our office will be sending out the handouts on Monday to the people that were in each session. We're doing today, we're doing tomorrow. Begrudgingly, we're giving Christina Sunday off. And then on Monday she can send out folks the slide decks if they've registered for this particular event.
And one last thing, in the resources, I have COVID safety resources in there too. So if you need them, they're there too.
Awesome. Great, Adrian.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you, everybody, for being here this evening or this afternoon. Don't forget our keynote. We do this, everything's backwards, right? Because it's COVID. So the keynote is like halfway, is in the middle of the conference. It should be called the halftime show. Helen Holmes's keynote is tonight at 6:30. And remember, we got a full day of sessions tomorrow as well, kicking off again, I believe at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So hope to see you there. Adrian, thanks again for being a part of this.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yes, everybody be well. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this encore presentation from the Fall 2020 Hinkle, Pryor and Fisher Parent Empowerment Conference. With 24 other presentations to view, there is plenty of additional information to help you become empowered. As a reminder, the information contained in this video is not a substitute for individual legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Copyright 2020 Hinkle, Pryor and Fisher, PC, Attorneys at Law. All rights reserved.